I know we're recording, but like, I'm just gonna be super casual about this. How are you
Very
doing?
cool. I'm pretty good. Yeah, I got some really good news about my research project yesterday, so I'm very excited.
Oh, that's great. Like,
It's a bright spot in this dark time. We got some appropriations, so some earmark funding to do some targeted research. So we're at least funded until probably the middle of 2027.
that's great. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Good
Thank you.
news. Silver linings. Take them when you can get them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Um, okay, well, so this is called Sourced the Coffee Podcast, and I'm Chris Kornman. I'm the Director of Education at the Crown in Oakland. Can you introduce yourself for folks who might not know you?
Sure. My name's Juli Burden. I work for the Hawaii Agriculture Research Center, which is a private nonprofit here on the island of Oahu in Hawaii. And
Cool.
there I'm a research associate. So just a research scientist, kind of can do diversified farming. I specialize, of course, in coffee, but also grow a lot of other crops.
Just a research scientist. Get out of here. I got a chance to come visit you in October. Um, and like we've been in conversation over the years. I think we were Instagram pals before we ever met in person.
It's
And
true.
I think we met at the ASIC, the science conference in Portland a number of years ago before the pandemic. That was like our first in-person meeting.
We did. That was like a while. That could have been like 2016 or 20. It was a while back,
It
yeah.
was a minute, yeah.
Yeah.
And that conference was like mind blowing for me. I didn't know how much science was behind like everyday coffee stuff.
Yeah, that conference is pretty fatiguing too, because it's pretty high level discussions, and just nonstop. So it's like 8 hours of very high level scientific talks, and you're like pretty exhausted by the end, even if that's your field, you know?
100%.
Yeah.
I took part of one of the days off and went and found an ultimate frisbee pickup group to like decompress.
Decompression. Totally.
Okay, so why did you invite me to come out to Honolulu to Oahu to visit? What was going on?
Yeah, so our location in Kunia, so Hark has two facilities. One's on a more dry music side of the island, so the leeward side, which gets pretty low rainfall per year. So it's Kunia, and that's where our main facility was. Historically, it was, I guess, when like it was like peak agriculture research area, it was a lot of sugarcane and pineapple. Um, and then kind of our other side is the windward side, and it's a little valley called Monowili near Kailua. And that gets pretty high rainfall. So that's like wet music forest. And so we have two diverse, unique environments where we have coffee footprints, which I think is a really unique opportunity to learn from uh, retail standpoint. So from a barista roaster kind of side, since we're a research institute and our goal is education, it's a program I really want to grow for coffee education. So this year was the first year I've really been able to pick and harvest any of the 5 acres of coffee that we have at Kunia. Those 5 acres are pretty much just germplasm. So we've planted and kept all of that coffee alive, and it's our job to keep it alive for germplasm since the 1990s. And so that's something we do every year. We usually, every 2 years, stump, kind of restart everything. And then honestly, it doesn't get picked. It's pretty wild. We just let it kind of flower, fruit. We're just maintaining it, right? For that living collection. And this year I was like, hey, would it be okay if I just went out here and picked some of the coffee in my own free time and kind of doing some processing experience experiments? Because there's just a whole plethora of genetics out there. And kind of because my interest and background is in coffee processing as well, I was like, I really want to play around with some of those genetics and some advanced processing techniques and see what makes sense or what happens. So, yeah, I wanted to invite you to come out here to kind of explore some of those ideas, and to also get your opinion on it and see it. Yeah,
Well, it was cool. It was great. I have never spent more than a few minutes, picking coffee cherries before. So doing an entire morning, in kind of the dry, hot, Hawaiian sun, it was a unique challenge. And I don't remember exactly how much I picked personally, but I felt pretty proud of it. I was like, I got about maybe like 10 kilos or so. I got a decent
definitely.
a decent
Yeah,
harvest for 3 or 4 hours of picking, but I wasn't very selective. Um,
I think you
and
were pretty
then
good.
I mean, I did okay. And you had sent me a couple years ago a sample of like a saltwater fermentation that you'd done with some coffee. It was like basically a lacto ferment, except that you were using naturally occurring salt water from the ocean, essentially. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. So that was kind of a coffee I wanted to do and a ferment I wanted to try because I'd never tried it on coffee before at the time. But I wanted to kind of tell the story of like Malkuta Makai. So literally like our agricultural practices and what we do, especially at Marawili in this really wet rainforest area has like metaphorical and literal downstream effects,
Mm,
because our water system feeds directly into the Kawainui Marsh, which eventually feeds into the ocean. So that's where I collected the water from for the fermentation.
very cool. And it turned out
Yeah,
great. It's delicious coffee, like delicately
amazing.
fruity, very sweet. And then repeating that kind of without the marsh water. This time it was you grabbed some like sea salt, I think, from the store. Is that right? And did a
Yeah.
solution.
Yeah, it
Eh,
was actually some pink sea salt from Kauai. So
Oh,
local sea salt, but like a
well,
good one.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, a couple months pass, you take care of the finishing the drying process and the fermentation. It was kind of a long fermentation, if I recall, right? Like a week almost, maybe.
Yeah, so those lacto ferments, just especially when you don't have an inoculant, take quite a while to build up. So even though like we would think of it as a long or aggressive ferment, it was 144 hours.
Hmm.
The flavor is quite mellow.
Yeah, totally. So it didn't taste like boozy or anaerobic like or anything like that. Um, Coffee showed up at the Crown a couple months after picking, and I was like, oh, there's about 3 pounds of coffee here. And it just was like a good reminder of how much work goes into producing coffee and how, you know, hours in the fields, pounds and pounds of whole cherry, and then to get like a finished, clean, green coffee at the end of it was like there just wasn't very much of it.
Mhm.
Um, and I really took that to heart and just reminded every time I look at the coffee I'm surrounded by about how much labor goes into that, how valuable that is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the practice of being able to go out and physically harvest cherry, especially when you're able to like isolate it as what you picked and then get that finished like pretty small quantity, especially compared to what you picked
Yeah,
back, is just such a educational experience.
100%. Um, yeah, great experience. I learned a lot, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. And I hope that you develop this into a program that people can come out and kind of join you and see how it works because it's really remarkable to do it and a very unique spot on the earth to be able to do it too.
Ideally, if we develop this program, we can make that affordable for the basically post-harvest chain as well.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
cool. It's exciting.
yeah, I hope so. That's my dream.
Yeah.
I can see if it happens.
Can you go into a little bit more depth about the purpose of the collection? Like, and would like a coffee farmer come to the research center and ask for a type of tree to be able to help them fight a particular disease or climate issue or something like that?
Yeah, so that's our goal this year, and what we've been working on is actually a collection that was started originally by Dr. Chifumi Nagai, who was the lead kind of coffee geneticist, research scientist for the coffee program at Hark. She started pretty early breeding coffee leaf rust resistant hybrids. So we basically did a lot of that initial work. I believe we're up to F3 or F2. Um, but she essentially did all that work in the 90s. It kind of got paused because we didn't have funding to actually screen the genetics. So that would be like sending it to Portugal and testing um, those genetics and those varieties with actual coffee leaf rust because we didn't
Mm.
have it in the state. We had to send it somewhere with coffee leaf rust where they could test it.
Well, that's
But
wild.
now that, yeah, so now that we have coffee leaf rust, unfortunately, finally got here, we are able to test it. So that testing has reemerged, and we're testing a lot of the individuals from that collection. So we've got, I want to say, over 200 different um, hybrids that were basically Catimor hybrids intergressed with commercial varieties grown in Hawaii. So really trying to get some of that disease resistance while also having a variety that farmers are familiar with. You know, everybody here loves their Topeka.
Hmm.
Um, they certainly have specific genetics. So we did even some mocha Catimor hybrids that are pretty unique. And mocha is pretty popular out on the drier sides that are mechanically harvested. So really trying to target both the small share kind of farmers that make up the majority of Kona and other producing regions, Ka'u, but then also trying to figure out some good genetics for our larger producers. So our largest actual producer is Kauai Coffee, which not a lot
Uh-huh.
of people realize, but it produces half of the state's production and is responsible for a pretty good section of our GDP as a state.
Mm.
And that's pretty scary because they're actually maybe going to go under, but I
They've been in the
I
news
digress.
lately. I saw that.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Scary.
yeah. But yeah, so trying to make sure that we have some good, robust genetics for commercially, mechanically harvested farms as well.
That's, I mean, that's the real work. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
and then do you, correct me if I'm wrong, but you also specialize in like soil science, is that right?
yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about like how that plays into, I mean, it probably doesn't relate directly to like genetic cultivar development, but there's got to be some kind of interaction. And then what does it look like for you on a day-to-day basis as a like a soil person? Like what does that mean, practically?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. It's definitely, well, in my academic background, and then two, something I'm just passionate about. It's like
Mm.
that joke, how do you know if someone's a soil scientist? It's like, don't worry, they'll tell you. Um, there's definitely an emphasis on soil health now, I think more so than there has been in the past, just because there have been some studies that really identify how building soil health can help tree health directly, especially when it's actively trying to fight off using its genetics, coffee leaf rust, and kind of those lesions and infections. So the healthier the trees that you have, the less the more your tree will be able to resist getting coffee leaf rust, having it inoculate on your tree to some extent. That's
Mhm.
all dependent. So it's kind of this, a lot of people call it G by E, genetics by environment, but really like what it really looks like for farm management is something called GEMS, which is genetics by environment by management. And then I'm going to forget the S. It's not sustainability. Let me look at it. But it is like this whole systems kind of approach. Okay, so the last one's social.
So,
So social norms and social kind of cultural ways that you manage integrated pest management on your farm, for example.
mm,
So there's so many variables other than G by E, but like the E is definitely what we try to focus on in soil science and building that because it's a long-term relationship that you have with soil to build it up. A lot of people think it's year to year, but it's really over these 25, 50, 100 year systems that soil builds and builds on itself. And those soil communities and basically the ecology of soil communities is what builds over time or gets destroyed very quickly. So
Mm.
that for me informs the work I do on the small coffee footprint that we have at Monowili Coffee. Um, and it's definitely part of something I've wanted to study in coffee for a long time, but it was somewhat unobtainable. So hopefully I can get some funding for it soon. But one of my passion projects that I actually haven't been able to do, but I'm very interested in, as you know, I'm always interested in water and water conservation. I think it's
Mm.
a conversation we don't have enough when talking about coffee processing and coffee farming in general. Coffee processing takes a ton of fresh potable water, and I
Yeah,
just don't
very.
think, I think we take it for granted a little bit, in my opinion. But so one of the things I really want to study is how to bioremediate coffee wastewater or those honey ponds to see if we can use it again, recapture those nutrients, put them back into the soil, and
Mhm.
see if we can have more of a closed nutrient cycle in coffee, where really the nutrients you're letting go of are any of the volatiles that release during fermentation and in those honey ponds, and then also the green seed. But then everything else you can try to put back into the system. So yeah, that's one of my passion projects is figuring out really active solutions and kind of closing that nutrient cycle and keeping it more of a closed system on the farm.
What does bioremediation look like? What do you do? How do you come up with a solution that could scale to a large farm?
My main concern with especially how typically it's done in Hawaii is we kind of just release the honey water back into our system.
Yeah.
And that does cause issues with the water table over time, I imagine,
Uh-huh.
potentially, because you have a really high um, biodiversity load. So it's called BOD in that water. And then you have a COD. So you have a ton of phosphorus, potassium, and nitrogen kind of
Mm-hmm.
going back into the water system, which can cause eutrophication.
Mm-hmm.
So especially if it's just a particularly wet area, or if you have a really high volume, it could have some detrimental effects to the water systems and environment. So, how we remove that and how we remove some of those things is either through other microbes that
Mm-hmm.
eat and process that biological load in the honey water, or my idea, which is to grow plants and grow organic matter in that water, and
Whoa,
plants that could potentially act as your organic matter back into your system.
interesting. So
Yeah,
like water plants, like lilies or something that would work to absorb some of the dangerous compounds.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. I have three plants in mind that I wanted to test, or not all plants, also one algae. So an algae and then two kind of swamp plants.
Okay.
So one of them, a lot of people would recognize right away is water hyacinth. That's
Mm.
just an easy one. It grows really fast. It's pretty tolerant of acid conditions, which is what you're going to be doing with that honey water or having with that honey water. And then also my favorite, which is the one I really wanted to target, which is called Azolla. It's a fern that has nitrogen fixing bacteria in it as well, actually. It has a symbiotic relationship, sort of like um, if you're familiar with like legumes having
Uh-huh.
nitrogen fixing bacteria that help them like leak more nitrogen into the soil, essentially. Azolla uses that nitrogen to actually proliferate. So I think it has some kind of crazy, it doubles or triples its biomass every 4 days.
Whoa.
So it's really prolific where it grows, and it's actually considered an invasive species in some areas, but it's one of these plants where you're like, oh, it's a potential problem, but it actually could also be our solution because of the way it can proliferate in these like closed systems.
You're in a unique position because you have like one foot in the academic research side of things, and you're seeing a lot of farming and processing practices, but you also work as a barista.
I do.
um, in a cool cafe in Honolulu, and So I think that gives you a lot more like a broad perspective that most coffee folks don't get that opportunity to kind of see everything. And I wonder, the long timeline of things like research, your multiple filial generations of trees and just how long you're talking about, centuries long timelines on soil stuff.
Yeah.
And then, every season you got to buy and sell coffee and, you're roasting on a regular basis and people come into the coffee shop. I'm sure you've got regulars that show up almost every day or every weekend or whatever it is. And there just seems to be kind of an incongruity in the timelines of those two sides of the equation, which hadn't really struck me before. Do you ever find yourself, what are the challenges in communicating what you see and do on the research side of things to a person who is just coming into the cafe for coffee?
Well, it's kind of wild. Those two parts of my brain have like separated a little bit,
Mm,
because one is so service focused and the other is so rational, kind of tactile focused.
yeah.
I would say, I work every Sunday morning and I really like keep that shift going primarily because of the regulars that I've been serving for it's probably 12 years now,
Mm.
I actually was talking to somebody that's like, we've known each other for 12 years. Like, it's pretty wild. I've been serving you coffee this long. And they're like, I was an undergrad when you started serving me, so it's making me feel really old when you tell me that. But it's really amazing because regulars or even tourists or pretty much the whole broad spectrum, there is like this, especially for coffee, this curiosity
Mm,
that I don't think exists with a lot of other crops. How many other crops in the market do we talk about genetics? Do we talk about processing and post-harvest processing, and all of these brewing and roasting? Like there's so many facets, and there's
mm,
so many people who have this natural curiosity about their coffee. It's their daily routine. And at least during service, I try to pick up on that curiosity and hopefully try to nurture it when I can. Um, Otherwise, people are just there for their pandan matcha latte,
uh-huh.
which is another type of experience. But one of the reasons why I do like to stay connected, with the customer side and the retail side is nurturing that curiosity. It's being able to deindustrialize kind of how we think about coffee, one customer at a time, one question at a time, and to keep up with that. And for a long time, it was also to inspire the staff to do that too. It's like we really need to put the value back into the product just as
Mm,
much as the experience, and to remind people and kind of shift that value back to the producer is something I'm always hoping to doing as a producer.
yeah.
But also that's just been kind of my mission in coffee from the beginning. So it's cool to try to see and be involved in the whole chain in that way, and try to kind of cultivate that when I can.
Mm,
So yeah, that's why I stick it out.
yeah.
It can still be tiring, as service industry work, but it's great when you do get those wonderful little interactions or good questions once in a while, even if it's something I can answer to probably too much of a degree, but I try to find a good healthy balance of like what is the most pertinent information for this question.
Yeah, 100%. I taught an intro class on Saturday morning, and I mean they're great questions, and it is the kind of thing that really keeps me going is when like just an average coffee enthusiast just wants to know more and
Yeah,
100% struggle with that like over answering. Like I know way too much about this topic. Um,
exactly.
it
Yeah.
also keeps me curious, I guess, too, because those there's always something else to learn or to question or to think about.
Exactly. And I feel like coffee is one of the perfect gateways for
Yeah.
the broader agricultural industry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Early in my coffee career, I had been taught to kind of write off Hawaiian coffee as like not very specialty. And you've probably heard this from other coffee folks, I imagine. help us out here. Help out the mainlanders. We could use some enlightenment as to like the misconceptions about Hawaiian coffee. First of all, it's not monolithic. It's not all just Kona. But like what
For
do we
sure.
need what do we need to know to appreciate Hawaiian coffee better?
Yeah, so that's such a great question. And actually, I think a question that the whole industry is grappling with right now,
Mm,
like from Kona, our eight growing different regions. We have Oahu, Maui, Ka'u, Kona, Puna, Molokai, Hawaii, and Hamakua. So four of them on our big island. It's just where a lot of the farmers are. So I think in Kona alone, there's about 800 different farmers,
mm,
and that can be anywhere from cherry producers to cherry buyers and full mills and processing areas. And so that alone is just the incredible amount of diversity just within Kona.
yeah.
And of course, with that diversity, variability. But in general, I think what's really important to remember about Hawaii coffee is the incredible amount of diversity that we have here. So historically, like in the 1990s, kind of when Kona really got its name, I think it was a really exceptional coffee.
Mm,
It was clean, it was consistent, but the coffee palettes have changed, especially since the early 2000s to now, of
yeah.
course. Like coffee has shifted tremendously, but a lot of farmers are doing what they've always done and what worked for them as a model for a really long time, which is these single estate coffees roasted by them, sold on the side of the road in air pots with little pump pots,
Uh-huh.
or and that's really like the maximum value that you can get from your product. And so it depends on what your experience is on what you think about Hawaii coffee, especially with the amount of variability now. You have kind of those older school farmers who are sticking to the model of what they've always done, which is a clean washed coffee roasted very, very dark.
Yeah, yeah,
And so I think that's a lot of, and so some of those profiles can be quite flat and not nuanced. And so a lot of people have a really hard time understanding, why is this coffee $12 a cup or
mm,
$50 a pound? And that's not just related to quality here, that's actually really tied to our cost of production. So cost of production in Hawaii is extremely high, as you know.
hmm.
Land, water, labor
Right.
is just exponentially higher than anywhere else in the world. So if you actually look at Hawaii's coffee, it's kind of the prices we should be paying for a like American living wage around the world.
Hmm.
Which is it's a hard issue to tackle. When you see those prices downwards of $4 to $6 a pound for even incredibly exceptional coffees,
Yeah,
that's that's really impossible to achieve here.
yeah,
But what we are kind of focusing in on and honing more in on of like where we're moving as an industry, both as individual producers and how Hawaii kind of wants to present itself to the world, which is we have actually a lot of world-class coffees here that not a lot of people are familiar with because they're so rare. Less than 0.5% of the world's global coffee production.
yeah,
So I think it is important for when people do see a Hawaii coffee, especially at like an SCA show or any of these global shows or even in competitions, it's like, remember, there's such a small amount of that coffee to go around in the world. It's actually a treat to try it whenever you can.
yeah,
Even if it falls a little flat, at least you had the opportunity to try it. But hopefully, especially in the coming years, we can actually blow people's minds because there's so much fun, good coffee coming out of Hawaii now, especially in the last, I would say, 10 years.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I was really, really impressed by even the small scale production of what you achieved at Kunia and how coffees that I would have otherwise probably written off just based on nothing other than environmental factors, full sun and low elevation and hybrid cultivars producing incredible quality coffee that I would, be honored to pay fairly for in a commercial context. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I think there is some brightness in the future there, hopefully, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I actually love Kunia in particular because of those attributes. It's really
Mm,
like Kunia because of the heat, the full sun, the genetics. It's sort of everything is against the odds there for having a good quality cup of
uh-huh.
coffee. And so that's where I really like to add in that processing intervention of like, how good can we make this coffee? Because we know the baseline you're struggling to get specialty, but
Yeah.
how far can we push that up while still having a clean, interesting, complex cup of coffee with just processing?
Yeah. And it works. You
Yeah,
can do it.
can
It's-
do it. It's one of my colleagues, Miguel, he said, if you can make Kunia coffee taste good, anyone can make any coffee taste good.
And that's exciting. I mean, people have been talking about this for a little while now, but we're seeing it in more extreme forms kind of worldwide with like the trend of co-fermenting or these other high intervention types of fermentation and processing that are beginning to add value and be recognized by taste deciders, by QC specialists as something that's interesting and innovative and delicious and that they can sell at good prices. That's also driving, capital S sustainability for farming and producing communities, people who are actually able to make money to survive consistently on coffees that would otherwise have been written off as commercial grade, you know.
It's where you can catch a higher value for your product when you can.
So one of the coolest other things that I got to do with you is you took me to this cacao plantation, this little farm kind of up in the hills, and it's kind of an experimental farm in some ways because there was also coffee and some other crops that were growing there. They seemed like they were heavily involved in like competitive high level chocolate stuff, which I thought was cool, but they were also like asking a lot of advice of you. Like it seemed like really important that you were there. I realized that I was just kind of like tagging along on a consultation call in some ways. Can you let's talk real quick about like what's unique about that place and maybe the challenges of something that's so like so diverse in terms of crop management?
Yeah, so I love that farm. I'm so happy that we got the opportunity, chance to go up there.
Yeah.
The coffee is very new to them. So
Hmm.
they are primarily cacao growers and cacao professionals. And as you gathered, they're both kind of really changing specialty cacao and really behind the scenes, elevating cacao in a lot of areas. Cacao even more so than coffee, has an issue with not really being identified on packaging on commercial products. And might know that like Hershey's, well, to be called chocolate in the United States, it needs to have at least 11% cacao solids inside the product. So literally to be called chocolate, 11% of it needs to be chocolate.
Well,
Essentially cacao. Or yeah, I think it's 10%. And then basically a lot of the commercial bars you see on the shelf from your Milky Ways to your Hershey's dark chocolate to all of these different commercial products are 11%. So they just make it and they add just enough to be called chocolate. And then the
dang.
rest of it is milk, sugar, emulsifiers, and fillers, which are much
Right.
cheaper than cacao. So cacao is having this kind of revolutionary moment itself with all of these craft bars. You guys have Dandelion pretty much right in your hood, which has been
Hmm.
kind of really pioneering this for a really long time. But there's now more than ever tons of other chocolate makers. One of my favorites is in Soma, which is in Toronto in Canada or near Toronto in Canada. And then just what they're doing for elevating cacao throughout the world is amazing. And it's building on the work that Dan and Max are doing by kind of going to origin, helping people tighten up their fermentation protocols, and kind of dialing in those fermentations to get more consistent, high quality fermentations with their cacao. And cacao's has such a higher amount of fermentation that needs to
Mm.
happen in terms of having two stages, drying protocols, and a lot of that is still like being figured out in specialty cacao. So a lot of what they're doing is specifically with producers to help elevate producers' products. yeah, throughout the world, which is just so cool because the downstream effect is I get to have more delicious chocolate from
Yeah.
Uganda and Tanzania and all of these incredible places. But of course, that's also allowing those producers to get more value from their product that they're already producing. So what they're doing here in Hawaii is now cacao is kind of this emerging crop. A lot of the producers here, especially with the Hawaii Cacao and Chocolate Association, are really trying to elevate all of the producers. Their whole theme is that they want Hawaii to be the Napa Valley of chocolate. So everybody has a fantastic chocolate. You can either get it processed into a bar and try to recapture a lot of that value through that value added chain, or maybe you're just selling it as a dried seed to a chocolate maker. But either way, they're really trying to kind of boost that. So what Dan and Max's goal is with that Kamana Nui farm, which is up on North Shore, is host these tours. Because for a lot of people visiting Hawaii, it's their first time seeing coffee in real life, coffee trees.
Uh-huh.
It's their first time seeing cacao being grown and actually seeing the pods and tasting the fresh fruit. And so it's like having some of that experience of having these, like, especially experience based learning times for
Uh-huh.
people, and some of that's on tour and tasting these chocolates and learning a little bit more about the industry. And I think they really wanted to add coffee as something to be able to offer on their tours of we also grow coffee here and this is our own coffee. And so it was like just a little nice little side project, I think, especially coming from the coffee producer side. It's really nice having a distraction from coffee once in a while. Like, ooh, I'm
Yeah,
also
sure.
growing ulu and bananas, and that's really fun and
Yeah.
exciting. And pandan. And so it's like being able to kind of diversify. It's like both cacao and coffee can both be like a lot of tedious work, as you
Yeah.
know, like
Yeah.
harvesting and going through that every year. So having these little breaks and being able to distract yourself while still being able to create a fantastic product, I think is the draw. So we
Cool.
like to share. We like to share information across industries, and I love to do that too, just as a Hawaii ag person. So I love the mission they're doing up there with their broader um, global kind of reach, as well as what they're doing locally to try to elevate our local industry.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of
And
cool work that you and those guys are doing. So,
yeah, and actually, so the Cacao of Excellence is what it's called. They host a tasting for chocolates grown around the world. It's basically what we do for Cup of Excellence. It's country to country, right? But there, it's like a global competition. So wherever you are in the globe, kind of get submitted in this competition. And Hawaii actually took three of the top 50 spots in the world.
yeah,
So that kind of mission to have exceptional chocolate and cacao is slowly building. So I'm very excited for them.
super exciting. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Julie. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah. Did we talk
You're,
about everything you wanted to talk about?
I mean, I feel like we could keep talking for hours, but
I feel bad I forgot to really talk about agroforestry, and it would be cool to eventually talk about agrivoltaics and coffee and agrivoltaics, but
I feel like there's a lot more conversation that we could continue having about this.
for sure.
Cool. All right. Well, let's schedule that.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Well,
More time to talk.
yeah, that sounds good. Okay, for now, I'm gonna let you go. Thank you so much for making time for me.
Heck yeah.
And just great to see you and chat again.
Yeah, for sure. It's been awesome. Thanks for
All right.
inviting me for this. It's very cool.
Oh, my pleasure. Okay, we'll talk soon.
Great.
Bye.
Bye.